So I'm Brad Coogan. I'm the editorial director here, as Lou said. And I want to thank everybody for attending our 3-day webinar series, which ends with this session on growing your customer base. So in today's metal forming and fabrication facilities, and I think you'll all agree, one of the trends that's become clear is this shift towards shorter part runs and higher mix for a lot of you, especially those that are offering fabrication as well as stamping. We've also, in leading up to this meeting, we've talked about how your customers have tighter lead times. They want you to meet those tighter lead times. They're looking for more customization. Flexibility to change direction at a moment's notice seems to be a critical characteristic of your shops. If you can respond to those demands, it creates great opportunities, right, to attract new customers, but it also can put enormous pressure on your company and your production team. So I think all of this really requires you to rethink how you schedule your work, how you tool up, how you handle job changeovers, and ultimately, the point of this session is how you manage the types of customers that you elect to work with and the types of jobs that you choose to get involved with. So again, that brings us to the topic of this panel discussion, and it is now my pleasure to welcome our 3 panelists. I guess, for the sake of argument, Chris and Mike, if you want to introduce yourselves and your companies again real quick, we'll have Colin do that as well, and then we'll jump into the line of questioning. So Chris, maybe you want to just once again introduce yourself and your company.
Certainly. Chris Zuzick, Vice President, Waukesha Metal Products, metal fabrication, metal stamping, 3 locations, 2 in Wisconsin, 1 in Mexico, just shy of 200 employees, been around since 1971. I've been with the company going on 10 years now, and I also sit on the executive board for PMA.
Right there. Mike?
Yeah, I'm chairman and CEO of TuscoMFG. We're in ex-urban Ohio. Business has been here 77 years. I've been here a majority of those. We focus on custom metal fabricating, including powder coating, some woodworking, some plastic fabricating as well, because about half of our business is making custom store fixtures and point-of-purchase displays for brands used in retail locations around the world, and a little less than 100 people.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And Colin, last but not least.
Good morning. Thanks, Brian. Good to see you and everyone else again. Colin Cosgrove, President of Laystrom Manufacturing. We're in the city of Chicago, and which is entirely optimistic of us. And we've been here it'll be 75 years next year. So we're about 70 odd people, maybe a little bit more than that. All fabrication. We used to be a stamper, we're not anymore. So we've got some background there and got through a transition. Excited to be here for the panel.
Thank you. So the first question we're going to pose, and I'm going to start with Chris, and then you guys, Mike and Colin, please add. The importance of being able to work with potential clients and attract them through expertise in design for manufacturing, which we talked a little bit about in the previous session, as well as prototyping. How important has that become, and those 2 abilities, and how are all of you kind of evolving with expertise in those 2 areas?
Yeah, it's becoming a necessity, primarily because of the world that we live in today with our customers and their products. A design today may change tomorrow, may change 3 times before next week, Wednesday, right? So we take the approach of cradle to grave with our customers. We start out with prototyping. We work with them on as a contract manufacturing company, we're not coming up with a design. We're working with our customers to help them be successful. And the best relationships are the ones that are give and take from the perspective of, is it manufacturable, et cetera. So if we can work with our customer from the beginning, prototype, and then move into production, and then in some cases they graduate to a volume that justifies staffing, we can help them do that. So it's a necessity. Regardless of the industry you're in, is to be nimble, to be able to change, to pivot on a dime if you have to, because that's what our customers' expectations are.
In our business, we have a heritage of designing as well as engineering and producing custom store fixtures and doing it quickly. If you can go anywhere in the world and have all the time in the world, you will go anywhere in the world. But many times our brand clients have retailers that say, hey, I got to have this in my store in 6 weeks. You're not going to Phnom Penh, or you're not going to anywhere in Asia or Europe to get it done, most likely. So that's kind of where we focus. We've been able to take the fact that our ISO 9001-2015 includes design. So we have that design perspective going into projects. And when we're working with non-display clients who we can provide occasionally, most often clients won't let you, but to make design suggestions at least for making improvements in the way something may work. We also think about it not just in the prototype stage, but also all the packaging. How does something get from point A to point B, and how many times is it going to be handled, and how does it get opened? How does it get assembled if there's assembly involved? How does any off-fall get recycled or disposed of? We're able to think rather holistically, about that more than, hey, I'm going to make this part and it's going to cost you a nickel. So prototyping incredibly important, and it has led us into doing more high mix, low volume work for clients who sometimes are looking for hundreds of SKUs with, per SKU counts, that you can count on one hand. Yeah. So it's like doing a whole bunch of prototypes in some cases.
Colin, how about you?
Yeah, we've had a strategy for a long time of doing prototypes and design for manufacturability with customers. I think almost every fabricator out there does on some level. Actually had a customer earlier this week on a call with a new customer, and a sourcing manager literally asked me a question. He said, this is our first order with them, and it's a low volume prototype development, and it's for their customer. And he said, look, is this something that suits you guys? Like, is this something that is aligned with that you want to be doing? And it was a great question, because he's trying to understand who we are, and if this is something that in terms of long term, and does this fit? And I said, absolutely, 100%. And in the context of that particular discussion, we were actually pointing out some design characteristics that we don't know the application for. They look like an electronics type cabinet. And we asked that question, look, there's a hole here. Does that make sense? Is that actually, is the design intent there correct? And so look, from a couple of different angles, it's definitely something we want to do. One is, does this support the long-term? We don't think in quarterly returns. We think in long-term relationships that have depth and resonance with customers. And if we can develop those, then we don't want to be a one-stop shop for everything. I'm not going to compete with somebody like, it was Mike, I think, was saying there's some wood and plastic and stuff like that. That's probably not going to be our bailiwick, because you're focused on a different type of market a little bit. Well, but we do want to be able to satisfy a range of people at the customer. And the engineering side, the commercial side, the sourcing side, you have to have multiple types of conversations. And on the one hand, as a solution provider, which is what we're all doing, we're all providing services and solutions typically. So as a solution provider, we want to be able to provide layers of solutions. We're also just kind of curious, and we're also sort of metal dorks. Like, we're fabrication geeks, like, this is fun work to go figure out. And so we kind of scratch our own itch in that respect as manufacturers, but we're delivering this value. And at the end of the call, that same guy who asked that question said, this was fantastic. You guys are asking us questions we didn't even know we needed to be thinking about. And I think this is a good company who does great assembly work, but they're not a fat company. And, and this has been developing, I would say, over the last 15 to 20, 25 years. Whereas a shift has happened where the customers, especially large customers, tend to be relying on small to mid-size suppliers for a depth of expertise that they outsourced when they went away from vertical. What's the word I'm looking for?
Integration.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, and I had a customer about 15 years ago who said to me he wanted me to come in and do a Fab 101, metal fabrication 101 for his young engineers, because what they had done, and you recognize this as a business, it's a big name business, you guys all know the name of, and they said what they recognized was they had outsourced. They used to be vertically integrated. They had outsourced their machine shop. They had outsourced the internal people, and that guy who had been there for 40 years with expertise, and the young engineer would come to him and say, hey, can I bend this thing in this way? And the guy would say, no, what are you thinking? You can't do that. And they would have this conversation. He didn't have that anymore. And so he asked me to come in and do Fab 101. And I've done that multiple times. I'm sure, Mike, Chris, you guys have done versions of that also. You can even find me on YouTube with something. And that's the type of stuff that we're providing value. And I think it's really deeply meaningful to the customers.
I just want you to know I did a quick search of URLs, and the URL metaldorks.com is available.
Better jump on that quick.
Yeah,
That's too.
no doubt about it. Yeah, I going back to Colin's point, we're also obviously seeing the changes in the tribal knowledge of a lot of our customers go away. They're retiring, right? And now the new buyers, the new engineers only know what they know. So if you can build that value and say, you can't do that way, and here's the 10 reasons why, but we can help you do this, you just made them a superstar, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to do as well in our company.
Yeah, I know that morphs right into one of our other topics that we had discussed, which is becoming or being the source of knowledge for the customer. And I think, Mike, you talked a lot about that as we were planning this session. You guys speak to the importance of being that source of knowledge, as Chris just did, but I'm curious too if you can share any stories of how that really played out with a customer, where you think maybe that was a difference maker for you in terms of winning a new customer or winning a job. I don't know.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, but again, maybe 8-9 years ago, specifically, there was a customer that we're making some parts for, and we got a call from them saying there was a problem. We were making some prototypes, kind of running, just getting right to the production level. We're just starting to, and they said, they called me and said, there's a problem. You guys messed up. I was like, uh-oh. Got to go solve that problem right away. So I drove to the customer and went out in the shop floor with them and looked at the issue. And this is, we were walking into this, they had two parts that were bidding against each other, and they had not accounted for the weld seam. And so they brought it apart right up against it. And they didn't, so it wasn't actually something we did at all. We made the parts perfectly to print. We didn't see the next level of assembly that they were doing. And so we're going to say, okay, look, here's what we need to bring to you. Help us look at that next level. Help us look at the impact of these designs that you're doing. We can put a simple notch there. It's a very simple way. Again, it's a small, add a notch to a piece of sheet metal. It may not sound like expertise, but it matters when it impacts the next level of something that the customer is doing.
Yep.
And so just walking them through how to develop the CAD file correctly was important to them, because that was really where the error was. They had just put a symbol in there. They hadn't actually put the weld in there. And understanding the application of that, again, if you've got your internal fab shop and you're vertically integrated, you'll recognize the over the years. But when you don't, it's something they outsourced. And it's a very simple example, but the CAD file is a big thing. We've gone back to customer and said, a very simple thing. This came from one of our programmers and said, it is so much easier in my life if the customer's engineer will just click unform, there's a button, or unfold, and it will eliminate issues that they have when they develop these funky designs. If they eliminate that just by clicking unfold, just hit that button in the middle of the process. That's all I'm asking them to do. And it would save hours and hours and hours of time. So those are little examples of very practical, pragmatic things to have those conversations with, but you need to be trusted to be invited in to have that conversation.
We strive to be the trusted advisor to our clients as well. And it really starts with the idea, are we the right fit for them? And any number of times we have referred prospective clients to competitors to say, you know what you need and what we do are not the best fit. And if we were in your shoes, here are the 3 places we would go to get this done. And it hasn't very often. It has in a couple of cases come back and paid off where somebody said, you know what, I can't believe you did that. And I actually have a case right now I think you would be the right solution for, and it paid off in spades. And in both the cases I'm thinking of, they are long-term clients. They didn't, in another instance, more than 30 years ago, we had a client, a bit of a beauty contest, came down to 2 companies. They chose another company, and what they produced ended up failing. And they and the retailer, it was a display fixture, got sued, over the deal. And the client, who was not our client at the time, called us and said, "Help! Can you help us with this?" And we quickly figured out where the engineering error was and designed a fix and got them a fix within 48 hours into their facility and showed them how it would fix it. And then we executed the fix. That client is still here 30 years later. And none of the people associated at the client side, but they know they can count on us. And they have in turn referred us to other companies, and people who have worked there have gone on to other companies that said, "Oh, this is somebody we know can deliver, with integrity." An easy word to say, a hard word to live sometimes. And it's tough when you said, "Okay, here's $1 million client." And I'm saying, we're not the right fit. Tough to do. But we think it's the right thing to do. And it's kept us from getting into trouble of trying to become a square peg for my client's round hole.
Chris, do you have any more to add to that conversation?
No, I'd rather be upfront with the customer and say, you know what, thank you for thinking of us, but we're not going to meet your expectations, whatever those expectations are. And because we've all been in situations, or we've probably seen situations or thought about situations, if I take this business, this is a game changer, we'll make it work, and blah, blah, blah. And you have all these optimistic views of how it's going to flow and work, and then you don't meet the expectation. And to me, that's really the worst scenario to be in, is like, we failed, and we took it on, and we went outside our box, right? And those are not good situations to have. I'd rather be upfront, and integrity is a big part of that. I think that is focusing on what you do well, and you value where you can, but being honest and upfront with the customers if it's just not a good fit.
I'm sure that comes down at some point too to the relationship your sales team has with your production people, right? And making sure you're not.
Well, I think that was a point I was thinking of too, because that salesperson wants the sale, and to be able to say no, we want to do that as quickly as possible, and not overlook an opportunity that could be and should be, the right fit, but to quickly go for the no in Sandler sales terms, and have them convince you why it shouldn't be no, perhaps. The salesperson is a key part of delivering a value. The salesperson is just somebody taking them out to lunch and processing the paperwork and cashing their commission check. They're not delivering enough value, and we have found over time that's a big cultural change too. I want engineers out there selling who can say, "Hey, what you're trying to do here is stupid, and let me tell you why," as opposed to the salesperson says, "Whatever you want, you're right. We'll make it happen.
Send me the PO." Yeah, I agree, and the last hire that I just brought on was a technical sales specialist, to Mike's point, because I don't need a gazillion leads or a gazillion new customers. I need quality customers that are win-wins. And it's a win for us, it's a win for the customer. And those long-term relationships are, as we all have been saying, very, very, they're a great annuity, right? And if you keep on doing the right things, both parties, by the way, it's got to be a win-win for both parties, not just one side.
Yeah, I think I would, having been someone with the title of sales engineer, which I was at one point, I came from an operations background, an engineering background. I was the first kind of half of my career and moved into sales, and I had nothing about sales. So it was really a sort of a right turn. And so all I could do was leverage my technical background to go to try to deliver value. It was just kind of the only choice I had really was to try to go do that. I didn't know how to go ask for the PO. And so, but I did know how to go in and tell customers, maybe not that was stupid, but that there was maybe a better opportunity to think about how to form something or weld something or whatnot. And that opportunity to deliver value is really is great. But I think now a number of years later, I would add on to that sort of two pieces. One foundational piece. We have to make sure that our salespeople know what our strategy is. So if they're out chasing business that's got nothing to do with what our strategy is, they're going to get frustrated very, very quickly. And they're going to feel disconnected from the organization. And they're bringing in something and we're saying, no, we don't want that. We don't want this. We don't want that. They're going to get very frustrated very, very quickly. And they're not even going to have an opportunity, to Mike's point, to deliver value because they feel that they're going to, but I'm bringing a great opportunity. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? It's this size by this size. And we're like, yeah, I know that's 6 foot long by 10 foot long by 3 feet. That's not something we can build. Don't bring that opportunity in. We want something that's the size of a microwave or whatever, right? And having that alignment is really, really important. And it's also important, even though I totally agree with you guys, like when you get those opportunities that are just not a good fit, that comes back to what's your strategy? What are you trying? How are you trying to grow the business? And sometimes you really do look at like, what is the opportunity? We've done a few of these over the years. That's just a little outside.
Yeah.
Just in what, and so, well, it's aligned with the growth that we want to get, the type of market we want to be in. And it's just a little bit of a stretch for us to go figure out how to make that, how to weld it, how to form it, how to do whatever. And so we get to, again, kind of be metal dorks, but also get to, it's fun for the team in the shop. It's fun for the engineers to go figure it out, right? And that's dynamic. And part of why we do this thing in Fab is because it's dynamic and changeable and there's new challenges. And it also, but it's aligned with the strategy. It's like, oh, we've never done tubing before. That's got like 4 pieces of tubing, that assembly. It's not an entire tubular assembly, but it's got 4 pieces. How do we figure out how to do that? How do we learn something? How do we grow? And then the next time we can do something that's got 8 pieces of tubing. And so I think those are, but if you don't have the alignment with the salespeople, with the engineering people, with the entire organization, knowing where you're trying to grow, what's your strategy, what kind of markets do you want to be in, what types of technology do you want to invest in a couple of years' time, those all feed into making those choices about when those opportunities come up. Is it the right way to, totally correct, make that decision quickly. And you can do that quickly when you know what your strategy is.
I'm wondering, maybe Chris, and I know Colin, you evolved from a stamper into a fab shop. But is that synergy between sales and production more difficult to attain when you're doing short run, high mix fabrication work compared to stamping, or is it going to be the same?
I think it goes back to that, what Mike was talking about before, that person that is out there talking to the customer and having the ability to understand kind of the value proposition between fabrication and stamping and be able to sell both, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think that comes down to leadership and making sure everyone understands where we're going, right? Here's where we're today. We want to go to here, how we're going to get there. Here are the things we're going to do and execute on that, right? And Colin's right. I mean, you have to stretch sometimes. And that's those are hard decisions because there's a fear of the unknown, right? What if I don't get an ROI? If I have to stretch and buy $4 million worth of equipment to make this work, how, what's the payback? How can I repurpose this equipment after the program ends? All those things are part of the big picture, but I think you have to look at some stretch opportunities sometimes. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about, at least at the very beginning, I talked about some of the requirements it seems that customers in the short run high mix are looking for, which is, and Mike, you alluded to it as well, this quick turnaround, quotes and delivery in both of those instances. Once the parts have already been designed and engineered. What are you guys doing on your shop floors? What are some of the lessons that you've learned to enable you to say, yeah, we can get that job done? And, maybe it used to be a couple of weeks and now it's like 3-4 days or less than a week in some cases. How are you? I'm assuming you say, yeah, we can do that, or you structured your shops to be able to do that. In case you are willing to accept these shorter turnaround jobs, and what's the technology and the training on the floor that's enabled you to handle customers that are looking for that quick turnaround? Maybe it's also, last minute design changes. You need to be agile, right? And quick to respond. So I don't know who wants to address that first, Mike. You want
to? I will jump in and say, caution. It's more on the front end than it is on the shop floor. The strain on your systems to be able to turn quotes quickly, accurately. You may be able to do it fast, but are they, how accurate are they? How many errors do you make along the way by doing it quickly? And then getting the engineering right, getting the documentation onto the floor, whether it's in digital form or even in paper form, getting it into the hands of the right people who can interpret it, effectively. For a company my size, I have 6 engineers, and, we spend a lot of time on the front end so that when it hits my floor, it goes fast, measured in days, not weeks. And so having a really robust ERP system that you can be in the sandbox to figure out, okay, if we take this order today, when does it hit each of the work centers along the way and come popping out the other end? I have a lot of friends in fab and stamping world, and most of them through PMA. And people talk to me about high mix, low volume, and I say, feel free. Your systems will undergo such stresses that you'll be better if you survive it. But the cure can be worse than the disease you think you're fighting at times. So you've got to have really robust systems in place to be able to pull it off. And then it's a matter of just serving it up, and again understanding, do I have the right production rate for this particular work center? Mm-hmm. And hey, I thought we'd be doing 100 an hour, and we're doing 10 an hour. Okay, what did that just do to everything else in the mix? It influences everything. And at any given time, we have a couple hundred jobs on our floor, and one problem here can throw off everything in the mix. It's like being on having plans to fly somewhere, and a storm in an entirely different part of the country hits, and it impacts you and your flight because the plane couldn't get there, whatever the cruise and everything else. So really understanding the communication requirements and the clarity and the confidence that you need to be able to do this before it ever hits the floor.
Yeah, and having a good ERP system, to Mike's point, is really critical, because if it's used correctly, and this is a little bit of where AI can come into play too. If your ERP system is used correctly, you can look at where your current capacities are by work center and determine if it's going to blow up or not going to blow up, right? And also comes down to your quality, the type of equipment you have, right? So your flexibility of a job you can run lights out, a brake press that you can run lights out, gives you some more flexibility in those types of situations versus if you have to manually do a brake press all the time. So it all comes down to a couple of different variables, right?
Colin,
Yeah, I'm thinking of an example that maybe illustrative. A number of years ago, we got a call on a Wednesday afternoon. I was actually on vacation. I was out of town, and I got a call from somebody who said, "We need some parts right away." And okay, and this is somebody new, but it was a reference from an existing customer. Great, wonderful introduction. Looked up, kind of did a little research who the company is. Kind of like, oh, this is a nice company. This maybe fits strategically with what we want to do. Okay, what does fast mean? Because fast means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And they said they wanted parts a week later, if not sooner. And it was a relatively simple part, just kind of a exterior of a cabinet, just a component of a cabinet, kind of a wraparound type of a thing. And so we said, okay, well, we think A, are they aligned with what we can do? Yes. B, can we quote it quickly and understand exactly what you guys said, all of the different characteristics? Again, it was a relatively simple part. The issue here was timing and speed and moving. Do we have enough knowledge? Is it strategically aligned? Do we have enough knowledge to quote it quickly? Do we have the people to quote it quickly? Because we got a couple of different people we can move quotes around between. We can quote it very quickly. We can understand, what the value is of this to the best of our ability from a margin standpoint, because we're going to highly value that speed and that turnaround. So we're going to try to quote it correctly. And then we're collaborating internally. Operations, planning, scheduling, quality, engineering. Can we just hit this really quickly? And as Chris said, what's on our equipment right now? What can we move out? What can we adjust? All of this is collaborative. All of this requires expertise in each person's domain. So we get all these, and then we have a flexible workforce. So we get people who could come in on Saturday. We get people who could come in on Sunday. We could have people who don't normally form parts, but they have enough training that they could, and they can come in on Sunday. So we have a flexible workforce. So we're looking at the customer strategy. We're looking at the pricing strategy. We're looking at the flexible workforce. We're looking at our equipment and understanding and capability of it. And we were able to go and source the material really quickly because we didn't have it in the shop. So we get the call on Wednesday by, I think, Wednesday night. So we got the call around noon on Wednesday. I think Wednesday night, we had it quoted. Thursday morning, we got the order. Friday morning, we got material. We cut material, lights out overnight Friday night. And we had people forming parts on Saturday and Sunday. And when I walked in, again, I had nothing to do with any of this except basically I said, yes, let's go. And on Monday morning, when I walked in, there were 17 skids on the floor and 1,000 parts formed. And those were shipped out to a painter that night and shipped to the customer. They landed in Pennsylvania direction on Tuesday morning. So from Wednesday to Tuesday, and that's the speed of fab. That is not, there's not an unusual. I bet both Chris and Mike could tell you similar stories of things that got turned in a week. Not the most common, not something with 47 different components to it, but something you can hit really quickly because you know the customer expectations, line with what you're trying to do. You've got flexibility in multiple domains. You've got expertise in multiple domains, and you can react with speed to those things. So
I love that story, and I want to point out a couple things. Yeah. In both, you had two vendors who are a part of that system too. It's not just what we can do internally, but can you get the material, and then can you have other processing, in your case powder coating, done on the outside, and that you have that kind of close collaboration as part of your team, external to your actual facility, to get the job done too.
It does all start with expedited quoting, though, right? I think that's what I'm sure your salespeople, the customers are going to ask your salespeople, how quickly can you get me a quote? So do you have, all three of you, you have that relationship between sales and quoting where the guys doing the quotes aren't yelling at the salespeople saying, "Why did you tell them we could turn that quote around so quickly?" And then I want to see too. Chris, you mentioned AI and ERP, and I'm sure that plays into the ability to provide quick quotes is the AI. So comment on, I guess, on both of those things, that relationship between sales and quoting, and how important that is, and how you're using new tools like AI in your ERP to help with that.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we've had in the past with the quoting side is making sure that whoever's on the sales side, they have all the information needed to quote. You can't quote without SolidWorks. You can't quote without a 2D. From a dimensional perspective, you got to be able to sure you have the checklist of things before we can even start that process. And I guess it goes back to also educating the team or sales on what it is like to quote. Most of the people that are selling today or doing the sales also understand quoting or have quoted in the past, so they understand kind of the challenge. That helps. But to your other point on AI, AI, what we're using AI for, AI still can't interpret a CAD. Okay, until you teach it, it looks at a SolidWorks and says blah, right? But what you can use AI for, and we've done this internally here with some outside help, is take a look at the 2D print or the 2D requirement of print, and write some code to determine whether or not this fits from a risk assessment, if it fits in what we can do. So, for example, if it has a cleanliness requirement that is outside our scope, it will say, it will mark it, a minus. Or if it can interpret the wording on the print, if it says stamping, or if it says fabrication or sheet metal, or if it says machining. I mean, if it doesn't identify our core competencies, it will mark it as well. So we're starting to use that. My dream is to have an AI basically just take the data of the print, and then take a look at all the quotes that we've done within our ERP system, and find, is there a fit there? And this is how we quoted this program for a fabricated metal plate 5 years ago. Does this match or not? And then come into some starting point. I think that will help quite a bit of getting some improvement in our quoting process. Tooling or outside powder, because we don't do any internal coating, we don't do any plating, we don't do any powder, we don't do any e-coat. Those tend to take a little bit longer in our world, just because we have to work with somebody for them to look at our print and then give us a quote back. But I think it starts with getting the proper information, and maybe educating the customer to what information you have to give us, and then make sure the sales team gets the proper information in front of the team, estimating and program management, and let them go do their job. And I think we have to get some, like I said before, the AI tools, I think, are something that we just naturally have to look at. Well, and before I forget, on the AI tools as well, going back to what I think Mike said, there's a lot of data in our system about how we quoted something and what we're really running at, because that's a big issue. Your money is in your variances, everyone. And so if you say you're going to quote something at 1,000 pieces an hour, and you've never even reached that, okay, don't do it again. Lessons learned, right? So I think that's another part of AI. It can take the data that we have over all these years and give us some information about making sure we take in consideration this issue or that issue, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm going to disagree with you slightly. Toward the beginning, you're saying nobody's out there being able to do that. That's already happening. We've been experimenting for the last couple of years with some vendors with products to say I can interpret it. I can take a PDF and give you a quote, methods of manufacture, as well as the bill of material, and compare it to rates that you have done comparable things for. But it's not quite there yet, but it will be. And if you're not experimenting, my encouragement to everybody on this call is talk to your ERP vendors, talk to others as well who may be doing things that could interest you, and find a way. We're all looking for this because this is something kind of the holy grail. Wouldn't you like to have somebody hand you a set of prints and you said, $11, here you go. Here's your price instantaneously, because I know, and everybody on this call knows, the quicker you can turn around a quote, the higher the probability you're going to get the job. And if you don't do it quickly and somebody else does it quickly, by the time you get back to them, has this ever happened to you? Yeah, I couldn't wait. I already placed the order, regardless of what your price was. So striking that balance between speed and accuracy, and ideally melding the two so you quickly, instantaneously in time, and it's not that far off, be able to use the information that's already in our systems to be able to accomplish this. I know we're not far off. And I'll make a shameless plug for Epicor Prism, which is one of the sponsors of this. And we're longtime Epicor users. We're part of the Prism family as well. The strides being made in using AI with our own information internally, because you don't want to send it out to OpenAI. The valuable insights. We're awash in data and starved for wisdom. AI is going to help us get wiser than ever with our own information. It is absolutely just around the corner.
Awash in data and starved for wisdom. I like that.
Great phrase.
Colin, you want to comment on this before we?
Yeah, when we're talking about, I think it maybe started with, getting the right information in and to associate the relationship between sales and estimating or quoting, and prompted by the universe. On my other screen, an email popped up that was a rep. So many of us work with reps, some don't, some have direct sales. We have a rep who sent something in 2 nights ago, and his first question was, hey, I think this fits what you guys are trying to do. Does this fit? I got this opportunity. It looks good. I'm checking with me first. Do you want to take a look at this? I looked at it and said, absolutely, yes. Actually, that looks fantastic. Thank you very much. Great. And I shot back a couple of cool questions, because the email had some PDFs, it had some SolidWorks, it had some Excel bill of material type stuff, but it didn't have things like packaging requirements. And I didn't do a deep dive into the prints. This was, what day is today? Thursday. This was 8:00 Tuesday evening. And I just saw it, and it was a quick response. What are the quality requirements? What are the packaging requirements? What volume did I see the EAU, but what volume do I actually want to receive parts in? Do we need a prototype first, or a qualification or something? So a couple of quick questions from me, but yes, this looks great. So we get it in, and we internally send it over to our engineering group, or the estimating part of our engineering group. And I just saw the email pop up. So that was Tuesday evening. So sometime yesterday, engineering had a chance to dig into it. And the email that just popped up, I did a quick counter asking for 22 files. There's some sort of assemblies that have multiple components to them. So they're asking for 22 files, some specifications, some welding specifications, some finishing specifications, some component parts that we don't have. So to the point, we can't move forward with the quality information. So our first pass within, 36 hours is going back to the potential customer to say, we need all this information before we can really move forward, because our hands are tied on the quality of quote. Maybe we could make something up. Now, probably not on this one, there's enough missing information. There was a product a couple of weeks ago that we got in, and it was a rep brought it in, and he said, "Do you want to look at this?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And it was like a TIFF file inside of an email. And I said, we can kind of see that, we can see the overall dimensions, we know what the material is. And I said, "Look, and you wanted this really, really quickly." I said, "I can quote this. I can get you a number. It won't be a number I can stand behind if they actually want to move forward in order, and we can't make parts based on it." So it was strategically aligned. Go back to that again. So, yeah. But it was like, we can't go turn this into product, but we probably have enough information to generate a quote that's within plus minus 10%. And that's enough for you because you want it next week, then okay. But I can't do anything until you get me more information. And then, I think also, I think it was Chris, maybe both of you said it, that return back from when you quote something, you land the order, you get it in, maybe not on the first prototype order, but you learn from that, but certainly once you get into production, if you don't have a feedback loop that's telling the quoting and estimating group where the gaps are, what's changing, then that's certainly an opportunity where we're anywhere. And this is true of staffing too. I mean, that feedback loop is really, really important. So you continue to refine your quoting process.
Very good. Very good. I want to move on to the next, really our last topic, and I know we're up against time-wise, but we talked a little bit as we planned this session on prospecting new customers, and it almost seems like it's a similar process to finding employees. You're using the right SEO terms, but you're also using the right GSO terms. And Mike, you said when we were talking, you said without strategy, everything looks like an opportunity. So talk a little bit. I know you're actively, I think all three of you are, but I know Mike, you've talked a lot about how you're really carefully selecting who you want to continue to work with, maybe getting rid of some customers, but that strategy of prospecting and making sure, and you talked a lot about using GSO, which I hadn't heard company executives talk about in the past, using GSO so that you're found by prospective customers with the right search terms. Tell us how you're using that. And I know, Chris, you talked about that as well.
Well, the requirements to be found when somebody is using an AI tool are different than a traditional Google search. And I imagine everybody on this call asks a prospect, "How did you hear about us? Where did you find us?" And so often the answer comes back, Google. It doesn't tell us a whole lot. Over the last year, we're finding more prospects are finding us with an AI tool. And if they say they've used, and so it's really not SEO anymore, search engine optimization, but it's generative search optimization, or GSO. And there are a couple other terms out there, but that's the one that we use when talking about it. And so we have restructured all of our web presence, social presence as well, to be more attractive to those AI bots than to the traditional Google kind of things. And it's fundamentally, you need to be answering questions that people are likely to be asking. And how do you learn about that? And that we're iterating with this. When somebody says, "I use ChatGPT," or whatever, we say, "Would you share your prompt with us?" And most often, probably 80% of the time, somebody goes, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." And it's amazing because they, in fact, are describing us. Now, how exciting is that? When somebody is looking for who you are, and there's a mechanism to actually find us, as opposed to SEO, which says, Bing, I put in a quick search term, and I get 1 million responses that I have to sift through. That's not that helpful, right? With the GSO, the old way was, how do I ask a short question and I end up with a long answer? Now people are understanding, I want to ask a long question to get a short answer, the short list. One of our, and I think I shared this with you before, Brad, one of our prospects came to us. They're in the UK, but they're looking to do something here in the States. They have business presence here in North America as well. And their product got them 7 prospective vendors. We were one of them. They shared who the other 6 were too, which was fascinating for us. So we understand what the competitive set is, which was very helpful. Half of whom we'd never heard of, which was interesting too. And it gives you a level of precision that you can then say that here's my ideal client, and I want my ideal client finding me. So, if your marketing firm, whether or internal marketing folks aren't talking about GSO, fire them, because this is where the game is now. This is where the game has moved.
Thanks for sharing that. And Chris, I know you had talked about which I also hadn't heard of before, this intent-driven search where you're looking for companies that are searching for the things that you make. I find that interesting. Yes. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, and what Mike was talking about with GSO and what we're trying to do from intent, it goes back to what I was saying before. It's about the quality of opportunities versus the quantity. Okay. We want the right opportunities that are fit for what we can provide value for. And so the intent side of it is using software or the subscription service to identify companies or people who are looking for the questions that, how do I find metal fabrication for aerospace, right? So driving those questions that the intent is looking for other potential buyers. So we're using that to drive kind of what we're identifying as potential prospects. Obviously LinkedIn, obviously things such as normal prospecting. It's identifying the right fits for the right companies, trade shows, et cetera, et cetera. But again, all these tools we're talking about are geared towards the right type of opportunities for us.
Sure.
And because we don't have a staff of 30 people going through leads, right? We have to look at the kind of the ones that are going to provide the best value right away. Easier said than done, but that's exactly what we're trying to do. Because time is money, and again, I don't want to be a quoting house. That's not who we are. If you want to get paid by just doing quotes, great. There's plenty of organizations you can talk to that all they do is try to get 20 quotes for a project that's worth $50,000.
Right.
That's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear that not only are there these new tools out there, but that they're actually being used, that you guys are actually using them. Colin, before we wrap up, any comments on this?
No, I think in this one, I'm learning from the 2 gentlemen here in some ways where I come back to thinking about, again, I may sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it's a bit similar to the intention base. I mean, is it aligned with your strategy? And so when those opportunities do come up, are you, because for some people, their strategy is going to be, I want to burn through 100 quotes to get 2% of them, and it's enough, and that's a process. If that's your strategy, God bless. That's fine, but know what your strategy is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a strategy for anybody on this call, but there are people for whom that is their strategy, and that's the way they want to approach it. And it's just burn and go. And that's, again, if that's your strategy, go for it. But we're trying to deliver a different kind of value. And I think that's for most people, it's a better concept. Is to deliver higher in the value chain and to be very selective about where you're spending your time.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've overshot our times. I really, really appreciate your time with us today as panelists. Thanks for sharing your stories and sharing some of your best practices. I want to thank the audience too for attending all 3 sessions and all the panelists and keynote speakers that joined us over the last 3 days. It's been a lot of good information. We will archive all of this on our website. You'll be able to share the link with others. You'll be able to watch it again, download the transcript, all that good stuff. So you should get an email from us with instructions on how to access the archive within the next day or 2. So again, thanks Thanks to our panelists this morning, and thanks Chris and Mike and Colin as well. And you can close your browsers, and I hope everybody has a great day.